And a good Monday afternoon to you. Welcome on into lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura. I'm Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Claibs. And Mike, we have reached the World Series with the Dodgers winning last night. It is Yankees and Dodgers in the Fall Classic, Game 1 on Friday. And I would imagine if MLB had their way, it would be Yankees Dodgers every single year for for ratings.
You know, it's interesting you put it that way, because I think baseball, as we know it, TV wise, on a national level, is at a real crossroads, and this couldn't have come at a better time, especially with all the consternation that's taking place on a regional level. They need a shot in the arm, and they couldn't ask for a better situation. You have the two of the most storied franchises in the game, two of the most recognizable people in the game, two good guys. I mean, a team that has good managers who really get it. You have the Mookie Bettses and the Juan Sotos who have personality galore. I mean, it has everything you're looking for to sell this game. And it'll be interesting to see how Major League Baseball tries to script this where they get a legitimate bang for their buck. And case in point, I don't know about you, but last night I was riveted to the WNBA championship game. I mean, they sold that thing so well. The officials, made sure that the Liberty was going to have a chance to win. But overall, just the electricity that was felt. And I give ESPN credit. They did a really nice job presenting it. But again, I think baseball is in a situation that, man, this has got to work. If they blow this, baseball is going to have some real issues because these networks are going to say, you know what, we don't want to pay that kind of rights fee anymore.
Yeah, and with the as far as the WNBA goes, I did not watch a single minute of the game last night. I had the football game on one TV, I had baseball on the other, and I don't think I really watched a full play of the football game. Just kind of looked over, saw what the score was, and went right back. But scrolling Twitter and it being on my phone during the game too, some of the texts that I got from people about the WNBA game and seeing that a lot of Twitter was also watching that WNBA game surprised me quite a bit. And to have a decisive winner-take-all championship game go into overtime is, that is exactly what these networks want when it comes to when it comes to those ratings. It's like the Super Bowl going into overtime, which has happened twice now, and it had never happened until about 43, 44, I think.
What was the first one? The Pittsburgh?
I thought it was the one in Minnesota was the first one that between the Seahawks and the Patriots, I thought was the first one to go into overtime.
Man, Patriots were in so many of them. It's kind of hard for me to remember which one was which at this point. But your point about how long it took for them to have this says a lot about where the game has come from. But I'm anxious to see this series. Just on calls with guys today, just talking about the series. Here's the one thing this postseason has proven to all of us: there's not enough pitching. We're using pitchers in the wrong manner, where the most pivotal game of your season has to be a bullpen start. And Dave Roberts used everybody he could find other than Oral Hershiser. I mean, it just came down to that. And the way we use pitching, they got to do something about it, man, because somebody's going to get caught short again before this is over with. And the innings level, a lot of these guys have exceeded their own personal innings mark as far as the season is concerned. So we don't know what we have left. And John Smoltz kind of touched on that recently about guys pitching on fumes. I remember a couple of years ago when Max Scherzer was pitching and he let it be known, man, I got nothing. I'm done, and I think we're going to see that again.
Is it okay? A few things, but first back to the pitching. Is it a case of not having the pitchers, or is it the managers that have just completely changed the way that they're managing games? It's similar to like an NFL coach where they get up 35-0 in the first half, and instead of just putting the foot to the throat, they're like, hey, you know what? Now we're just gonna run dive plays the whole second half. Next thing you know, it's 24-35, and they're sitting there going, oh, we got to get back to what we were doing in the first quarter. I think this is the case of, okay, hey, you know what? In a game in June, we'd let our starter work around this. In a game in June, Sean Manaea would have gone out there for probably 4 or 5 innings with what he was doing. But last night, it's like, oh, no, we got to get the next guy up. We got to get the next guy up. And when you start throwing all these relievers out there time and time again, you need every single one of them to be on it, because if one's not, he's going to give up a 6 spot, and then you're done.
Yeah, no, you're right, and you're more lucky than good, because it only takes one guy in your bullpen to have an off night, and once the bleeding starts, it's hard to stop. Yeah, I also think, and I think we're going to see this. This is maybe a little bit more radical than what some people will accept. I think they're going to reduce the amount of people you can have on your bullpen. In your bullpen, I think we're going to see these guys drop it by at least one this offseason, because I think baseball realizes that we have to get guys to pitch longer. We have put guys in such a comfort zone about what they don't have to do anymore, because of their agents, because of everybody in their ear. They don't want to jeopardize their bodies and their careers, but in short, they are. And I think they're going to force guys to go longer and be rewarded from a team standpoint. So I would not be surprised to see some radical, maybe just a little too harsh of a word, but I think you're going to see a couple of eye-opening situations unfold this year, not next year. I think this year, and I think they kind of kept it under wraps. I think the Players Association is aware of it. And the Players Association at this point is just going to say, look, as long as no one's losing a job, we can work with it. And with expansion just around the corner, they'll be able to say, hey, we're going to provide 26 or 27 more jobs here anyway.
There are so let's go all the way back to spring training when it comes to getting these guys ready. Pitchers and catchers for decades have reported early. Spring training starts on this day. Pitchers and catchers report 5 days, a week ahead of time for that. Is that something that you change at some point and say, hey, you know what? Pitchers and catchers, they're going to report a week after the players do. You change up because they're already throwing around Valentine's Day. Yeah. And here we are.
You know what?
I mean, it's Halloween. They're still pitching.
No, they're throwing well before Valentine's Day. Remember, everybody has his own off-season routine now. There was a time when a guy came to spring training to play himself into shape. Well, that's not the case anymore. These guys they could go out and face hitters 2 days after they get there.
But they can't, though. I mean, I think we saw this year that hasn't. I mean, look at Jordan Montgomery, look at Blake Snell, how late they signed into the season, and then they were not effective in their first few starts. Jordan Montgomery was awful this year, and I think he put full blame on that on Scott Boras, but in reality, he should have been ready to go regardless of whoever his agent was signing him with.
Yeah, valid point. I think it depends on the individual as far as his mind prep and what are some of the things he needs to do. Again, these guys are creatures of habit, and when it comes to getting ready for a season, guys, if the toast from room service is cold, then their day is ruined.
Yeah.
So we've got to get these guys to get out of this comfort zone, for lack of a better term, when it really isn't a comfort zone. They're enabling themselves to be even less productive. So it's going to take some real arm twisting. You're going to have some pitchers complaining. You're going to have, well, this is the reason why he got hurt, which I disagree with. I think guys get hurt now more because they're over-prepared compared to underprepared. And we've got to get a lot of the noise out of the room. Again, I mentioned you have the agents, you have the family, you have the friends, you have the guru, and that's another element you're going to have to deal with. Everybody's got a pitching guru or a hitting guru. And if that person isn't on the same page with the organization, now you got the friction of what's right and what isn't. So I think this is some real major changes in the game as we know it, because we can't keep this pace up where the biggest game of the year comes down to a guy who hadn't started a game since last year.
Or a closer. Dodgers had their closer starting.
Had their closer started, yeah.
Which I am fine with in big games like that. If you are playing a game where that one win is the only thing that matters, I am 100% fine with the strategy of the mindset and the game plan of, hey, it's first 1 to 20. You have the lead after once you get 27 outs. And that is, I am 100% fine with that, of figuring out, hey, who's going to get my first 3 outs? Who's going to get my first, how many can you give me after that when it becomes a race to 27 outs? I have no problem with that mindset and that game plan going into it. But as we've talked about already, you have to have every single person on the same page. And like John Smoltz
That
was
doesn't
talking
happen.
about yesterday in that first inning, that Michael Kopechek is not used to a pregame routine. And I mean, you're asking a closer who might not walk out to the bullpen until the second inning, third inning of a regular game.
Hey, Smith didn't walk out till the fourth or fifth.
Yeah.
He's on a training table taking a nap. But
Yeah.
to further your point, here's the only time I would ever use a closer to start a game. In spring training against a team we're not going to see. Because here's why. Why am I bringing in a closer to work on his stuff against guys wearing number 93 on their back?
Yeah.
I want him to be able to see at least how good hitters react to his stuff. Now, he might just want to pump fastballs, all right? He may not want to show him too much. But I want to make sure he sees how good hitters react to what he's throwing so he can file it away. Excuse me. And maybe the hitter will. But I'm going to make sure it's not someone, in my division and probably not in my league. So, for instance, if the Cardinals are in spring training, my closer is going to start against the Houston Astros.
Yeah, if you could face Altuve and Jordan in that first inning, you want him to face those guys. Get him in there, get him out of there.
Exactly.
He's not, Jason is. I know I remember the Cardinals doing that with Izzy back in the day. They would have him start games because you're facing the three best hitters in the lineup. You're not going to have a mindset down in Jupiter, Florida of I'm coming in here on a Tuesday afternoon at 3:00 and I got to get these 3 outs in the ninth inning. No, all your buddies are already out of or have left the facility. And your mindset's probably that you're pissed that you're not with them.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing. But I think, again, I'm gonna go back to this, and we can wrap up on this. I think we're going to see some significant changes in how we view pitching and how it's being used. We've come to a point where analytics and reality have now met each other face to face.
There is a lot to get to as far as the players go involved in this game. Yankees and Dodgers in the World Series. When's the last time? I don't know if you've seen it. When's the last time they faced each other in a World Series?
Boy, it was back in the 80s, I think.
Was it in the okay?
I think, again, it's kind of fuzzy. It's been a while. But right now,
for starters,
go ahead.
No, what I was going to say, for starters, you are going to have the presumptive MVPs of the American League and the National League facing off against each other. Shohei Ohtani, Aaron Judge should be expected to be the MVPs of their respected leagues. This is the first time that it has happened, Claibs, since 2012. The first time that's happened, Buster Posey and Miguel Cabrera. It is the 7th time overall since 1969 that we have had the two MVPs facing off against each other in the World Series.
Didn't it happen in 68?
And so I have the stat I have is it's the first time I'm going back to the divisional era in 1969. Because I'm thinking
Gibson was the MVP in 68, and I thought Denny McClain won 31 games that year. He had to be somewhere in the ranking on being an MVP.
That would, like I said, I mean, mine stops at 69. The MVPs.
Okay. Well, that's what that's when the divisions and everything changed. Yeah, okay, because Atlanta came in the next year. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So 1970, Boog Powell and Johnny Bench. 75, Fred Lynn and Joe Morgan. 76, Joe Morgan, Thurman Munson. 80, George Brett and Mike Schmidt. 88, Jose Canseco and Kurt Gibson. And in 2012, Buster Posey and Miguel Cabrera. Those are your MVPs that faced off against each other in the World Series over time. So we will get that again with Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge. And it would not surprise me, though, if Juan Soto kind of overshadows both of them right now.
I agree.
With the way he's playing and the fact that he's due right now for a new contract. I mean, everybody's be talking about what's he worth, and every big hit, every home run he gets, that number seems to get higher and higher. I think last week we said 400 million. And then since then, I mean, you're getting up to around 500, 600 million for Juan Soto.
I think his money is already made. And I don't know what it is. I mean, could he have a great World Series and people would say, oh, we got to pay him now? I think they already know they got to pay him. Juan Soto, there's a handful of players that I stop what I'm doing to watch hit. And he's one of them. Luis Ariz is another guy I love to watch hit. Soto, and it's ironic that most of the guys I like to watch hit are left-handed hitters. But Soto,
They got
his
the most
approach,
beautiful swings, Claibs. All of
they
them.
do
Yeah,
have some nice swings.
yeah.
Which is another good question, and I'm sure you and Rammer, you might want to ask him who has the best right-handed swing you've seen.
Man, of all time or
Well,
current?
if you name 3 or 4 guys.
I mean, when you look and when you actually break down Albert's swing,
That's where I was going to
that
start. Yeah,
is because when you actually listen to, I mean, I think part of it goes into listening to them talk about hitting. And when you listen to Albert break down and talk about hitting, this is something I have sent, I coach my kids' 11-year-old team. And since they were 9 and 10, I have pointed them to the video that Albert did in 2022, where he was in the when he was in the batting cage at Busch on the tee, and he
yeah,
was going through the tee work with that, because these kids, they don't want to hit off the tee. And you're looking at Albert Pujols, a future Hall of Famer, talking about all the tee work he did. And when you listen to him break down what he does on the tee, and then you watch him do it, it's a beautiful thing.
it is. It truly is. Pedro Guerrero had a great swing. Frank Thomas had a really good swing.
You see, okay, so Frank Thomas, my favorite player of all time, I disagree that he had a great swing, and it has to do with that back foot. That back
Yeah, but he covered. The thing is, I'm talking about his coverage area where you couldn't beat him inside or outside. Now, it may be a little unorthodox,
yeah.
but his coverage, his plate coverage, man, and Grant, he's a big man. Okay, I get that, but I used to love to watch him get a hold of one. But man, we ought to make a list of best right-handed hitting swings, because, like you said, there's so many guys left-handed who swung the bat well, and you can go back to Ted Williams.
Would you put Aaron in that list?
Well, Aaron had a quick swing. He had really quick, as they used to call him, quick wrist, and he could just flip like that, man. And the next thing you know, it's in the seats. Man, you know who I got? I was just talking to him earlier. I'll call Bob Hendricks and ask him who are we missing with a great right-handed swing. Because we just don't hear that. We just don't hear about it a lot. So you ask Rammer when you guys do your next show and see what he thinks.
We will, Rammer and I later this week. Game 1 isn't until Friday. One thing to watch, if you haven't seen it yet, go find the video of Greg Amsinger watching the Juan Soto at bat and kind of going through all of that. When you talk about how much fun Juan Soto is to hit, and same thing with Luis Ariz. I mean, these guys are professional hitters. I watched a video the other day of Tony Gwynn talking about how he warms up and takes batting practice. And when you actually listen to these guys and their method of how they go through this and get themselves prepared. I mean, Juan Soto fouled off so many pitches and took so many pitches because he just didn't like what they were throwing at him. He wanted one pitch, and he finally got that fastball and that at bat and knew exactly what he was going to do with it. And for a guy that young, that's been around the league now for 6 years, 5
at least.
Yeah. And he's only, I think he turns 26 this week.
Is it this? I thought it was 25 this week. Anyway, he's a very young man.
But yeah, and for him to be that intelligent in the batter's box in that big of a situation, it's really just amazing.
Here's what I like about Soto also. His stance, he's got that wide base where he doesn't have that load like everybody has, man. He's using his whole body, and that's how he drives. Jim Edmonds was like that. They had that wide base, man, and they could still cover and they could swing for power. It's not for everybody.
No.
Mason Wynn was doing that in spring training, and he was getting himself out. And I asked him, I said, what did you change from last year to this year? He said, well, I opened up my stance. About a week later, he said, I'm going back to what I was doing in AA. And he kept his feet closed and he glided into the ball. When you want to hit for power, you can do that. McGuire had a wide stance. The power guys were always like that. But Soto, everything he hits is a line drive. And even if they miss outside, he still can get enough bat speed going to be able to hit it to the opposite field. He and Ohtani, two of the best opposite field hitters I've seen in a long time, especially Ohtani.
And Otani, I mean, that's another swing you can break down, and you can talk about it again. That's unconventional, but it is.
Well, is it unconventional? Because here's why I'm impressed with him. His head never moves. Once he locks in, he's staring right at where the release point is, and he tracks it that way. Now he'll strike out from time to time, but I don't know if I call it unorthodox. Keeps his hands away from his body.
But it's a vicious swing.
True,
It
but
is.
but here's the thing. I think the guy could hit for average. I think he really could.
Yeah.
And he may come to that at some point in his career. But I think Otani could hit 320 every year if he wanted to.
Yeah. So you get Shohei on the big stage. You have Aaron Judge on the big stage. Juan Soto, Giancarlo Stanton has once again put himself back into the mix of best baseball
Relevancy.
players. Yeah, that we've seen in the last 15, 20 years with what he's doing in the postseason. Has put himself at the top of lists of Yankee postseason performances with what he has done this offseason. It is, and with all of that being said, the NLCS MVP was Tommy Edman, who Ramber and I sat and did a Daily Cards Live before every single game this season, and not once did we mention Tommy Edman in the lineup for any of those games because he wasn't healthy the whole year. And the Cardinals kind of scratching their head, wondering when that was going to happen. Took a risk, traded him away, got Tommy Pham and Eric Fetty back in the mix. Tommy Edman gets healthy, and now he's the cleanup hitter for the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Well, let's back up on this for a minute because I know people were like, here we go again. We gave away another good player. First of all, Tommy Edman
didn't. Maddening to see that
he didn't have a spot on this team.
No.
Okay. Now he came up as a shortstop, and he was an okay shortstop, but he wasn't defensively better than Mason Wynn. They moved him to center field. He was Gold Glove worthy in center field, but Ciani turned out to be a little bit better defensively. And I'm of this belief: had Ciani not gotten hurt, he'd have been a finalist for a Gold Glove in the outfield. So it wasn't like they gave up on him; they just didn't have a spot for him, and he wanted to play. Hey, I'm happy for the guy. Tommy Edman, one of the classiest, most professional guys I've been around in a long, long time. And I can be happier for him. But the way things stacked up here, I'm not sure if he would have been given the same look. And I got news for you. Had the Dodgers had not had so many injuries, I'm not sure what his role would be with them. He might have been a utility guy. He and Kike Hernandez and a couple of those other guys would have been fighting for some playing time. But when Rojas went down, then that made it it was a no-brainer to play him there.
Yeah. To sit here and to put Tommy Edman in that same category as Randy Arozarena and Adolis Garcia, and fans ignorantly want to throw Luke Weaver into that mix too.
Luke Weaver on his sixth team now?
Sixth team that he's on. Which, by the way, hey, I called it last week on the show. One day that Luke Weaver
you did
was going to cost the Guardians a game or cost the Yankees a game, and sure enough, he did. In one of those.
Hey, listen, you were the first. I almost called you when it happened. Because I was like, okay, now somebody just told me Luke Weaver was going to have flat tires next time out. Then it dawned on me that it was you.
But to go over, I mean, to actually, you could turn on the games at 7 o'clock or 6:45 every night and just watch it and base your opinion off that. But if you actually read about it and see what it's actually, and there's plenty of good writers out there that are covering this team day in and day out. And you see exactly what was going on with Tommy Edman all the way back in February, you would know that it just got to a point where you had to cut ties. He became a trade chip, and to sit there and go, oh, at least they got a few weeks of Tommy Pham for him. No, you know what? It wasn't the few weeks of Tommy Pham. They went to make a postseason run with somebody who can get on the field and play. Tommy Pham could be in that lineup immediately for them in the month of August. Tommy Edman couldn't. Yeah. And that was the choice the Cardinals went to make. They didn't win games. They let Tommy Pham go to another team and have a chance to play at the postseason. He did. And you know what? You get a whole nother year of Eric Fetty next year too for that Tommy Edman deal.
I'm going to say this. This is going to be an interesting week around baseball because now we have this break between now and the World Series. don't be surprised to hear some major announcements about managers and coaches and things of that nature and front office personnel.
Yeah. Next game's not until Friday. So it's,
Yeah, I
yeah.
wouldn't be surprised to hear. Well, I would just say stay tuned if you're in St. Louis.
Okay. Missed that. That's what happens when I miss the pre-show meeting for this. Hey, before we get
You're
out of
doing honeydews around the house, so I mean,
hey, before we take a break quickly, Bally Sports
uh,
is no more.
they
It
just
will now.
changed the name. It's the same people running it.
I know it will now be, but I'm guessing they got some money coming in.
Yeah, but here's a question for you. And
By
granted,
the
I'm
way,
in
it's
the radio business.
FanDuel Sports Network is what it's going to be called now. So the FanDuel Sports Network is where you're going to be able to watch your Blues games this week.
So here's what look. I got no dog in the fight here. I just want to see my TV colleagues be gainfully employed and be able to do their job. But how can you let an organization who blatantly messed it up financially? They went out and found some cash and changed the name, but what else have they changed as far as the practices is concerned? They're trying to extort or threaten the small market teams, either renegotiate or we're going to drop you. Well, I'm anxious to see who drops them, who says, "Well, go ahead and drop us. We'll put our own thing together."
Right.
I think it's a matter of time before somebody walks away because the money's not going to be the same.
Here is my issue with this right now. And maybe it changes in some cases here in what, 15 days? Maybe it does. But you now have the TV station that we are going to be watching Cardinal games and Blues games on is the FanDuel Sports Network. What is FanDuel known for?
Gambling.
What can you not do if you are sitting at a Cardinal game or a Blues game?
Well, that's all going to change after November 5th.
That's what I said. That's what I'm saying. In 15 days, maybe it
Yeah.
changes.
No, it's going to change because I think here's the best indicator: the opposition group they stopped running commercials. So either they run out of money or they run up the white flag and surrender. So it's going to happen, and I'm of the belief that all of these teams already have a plan in place to hit the ground running when their season starts. Because they've sat around too long and not be able to figure out, all right, here's what we need to be doing as soon as we have that. But the one thing I think that comes into question, and this has been kind of a consistent battle cry during the election years, whenever there's something to do with gambling, marijuana, anything which used to be known as a vice, they always build it around this will help schools, this will pay educations, this will, and so I guess me being skeptical, I have not heard one teachers union say, all right, so what kind of money are we expecting? Because when we sit down at the negotiation table for the next union contract, we already know X amount of dollars is plugged in, correct?
Yeah.
So I know they wanted to try and sell it the best way they could by bringing education in because nobody says no to education. But man, let's not be too gullible here because we don't know what the cut looks like. We don't know how that's going to be distributed. And we don't know if that money will ever be funneled to education where either you're improving the schools or you're improving teachers' pay, which, by the way, in the state of Missouri, one of the lowest teachers' paid in the country. So there's a lot of tentacles to this that we still haven't been able to figure out where they're going to land at this point. But I think it's going to pass. Every state around the state of Missouri has it, and they're seeing a windfall from it. And with you having the Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, you think about it. You have the Chiefs and the Cardinals, two recognizable teams that people like to bet.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The Royals had a remarkable season. They're going to be in play. Then you think about the Blues, who are maybe a year or two away, but hockey fans are very passionate. I don't know a lot of people who make money betting hockey, but it's out there to be had. So I think all those things will come together at the right time.
You got to bet those first goals or goal scorers or point scorers. That's what you got to bet on
Really?
hockey.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where
Shows you how much I know about that.
That's where the fun betting is with
Okay.
that. You bet on who's going to score a point or who's going to score a goal. I'm not trying to mess with point spreads or over unders or sometimes I'll bet the over, but for the most part, I'm not messing with point spreads or straight up picks. I'm just doing it for entertainment values for myself. Hey, we have just spent 30 minutes talking baseball. We will turn the page and get onto the gridiron. Lots to get over with week 7 of the NFL. 2 games left there and a whole lot of college football that we'll get to right after this. It's Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura.
Munganess St. Louis Acura has the vehicle you want, like the all-new 2025 MDX. Get the new 2024 RDX with financing as low as 3.9% or lease with no down payment and just $459 a month. Lease the electrified 2024 Acura ZDX for just $589 per month with zero down. We also have over 100 Acura certified pre-owned vehicles in stock. Munganess St. Louis Acura, better than ever for you.
Back here at Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura. If you missed any of that first segment, a lot of baseball talk was there, and you can find it up on the podcast later on today, wherever you find your Claibs online shows. Bob Ramsey and I later this week will be doing a World Series preview. Game 1 of the World Series starts on Friday, and if any Cardinal news happens to break throughout the week, we will bring that to you as well here on Lunch with our on Daily Cards Live. Speaking of turning the page now to football, we will have Thursday afternoon talking football. Mike Martz and Jim Thomas breaking down all of the NFL games. But, Claibs, we're going to start in college football this weekend. It seems like every single week has been more exciting than the one before. And for the second time this year, we have seen the number 1 team in the nation, or has it been the third time this year that we've seen the number 1 team in the nation go to? I think Georgia was ranked number 2.
Georgia was Georgia who was number 1 at the beginning of the year?
Number 1 at the beginning of the year was Georgia, but I thought Georgia and Texas flip-flopped after Georgia almost lost to Kentucky.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And then, so I think they were number 2 when Alabama beat them for that. So we've seen Texas. Yeah, Texas goes down, number 1 team in the nation, to Georgia. There are now no unbeaten teams in the entire SEC 8 weeks in. I can't imagine that has been the case anytime in recent history.
Well, but think about the SEC is a lot more competitive. As I've said to you before, we've seen the last undefeated team go wire to wire. That's not going to happen anymore. Scheduling and competition, everybody's got good football players now, thanks to the portal. So I don't anticipate, as I said earlier, we're going to have a 2-loss team that's going to be in the top 12. Period. We have a 2-loss team that's going to be in the top 12. And this is where strength of schedule, and if you're from the SEC, you're going to get the benefit of the doubt. You're going to have a chance to move up compared to some of the other conferences who don't schedule as tough and just even internally. So we got a long way to go, but it's hard to gain ground now. You know, we saw where Missouri dropped, and you know what? I still don't know who Missouri is. I mean, you know, I went to the game against Auburn and sat there and was like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, Auburn wasn't very good, and Missouri didn't help it. And you just really wonder just who is Missouri. I mean, Brady Cook had a remarkable comeback in his game. Luther Burden was there when you needed him to be there. But there's something missing from this team, even with them having a reasonable running game. They got a couple of good runners on that team now. But it's something that's missing. And we're going to have to find it quick because they're going to go to Tuscaloosa, and there's going to be a whole bunch of ornery folks down there waiting for them this weekend.
The a phrase that has been made popular these last few months, Claibs, is sane washing, and I'm going to use that right now for when it comes to Alabama, who even with 2 losses is ranked 15th in the nation. And I have seen college football people trying to justify the fact that their loss to Vanderbilt wasn't as bad as what it looked like, even though they were the number 1 team in the nation and they lost to Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt. And you're going, you know what? Hey, Vanderbilt's not that bad. Maybe it wasn't that bad of a loss. And, you know, it's not going to hurt them that much in the polls. But when Mizzou beats Vanderbilt in overtime, Mizzou drops in the polls. But when Alabama loses, that's a Mizzou win, and they drop in the polls. When Alabama loses to Vanderbilt, they look at that and they go, hey, you know what? Maybe Vanderbilt's really good. But you can't go back in time And we're not going to say, man, hey, Vanderbilt really showed how good they were against Mizzou. No, for Mizzou, it was a bad win. But for Alabama, maybe it was a good loss.
No,
It,
you're right.
ridiculous.
And this is again why I don't trust and don't respect polling. Okay, and I've said it to you at the beginning of the year. I have no confidence in the system, and how they evaluate teams. You should be decided on the field. But this is the problem that we're having, Joe, because of the portal and the NIL. We're not looking at the names of the players. We're just looking at the names of the jerseys. And if we're familiar with Alabama, we're familiar with Ohio State, we're familiar with all those teams, we give them the benefit of the doubt well before you give Missouri, Illinois, and some other teams that are making their way up the ladder at a fairly good pace. If you look at those top 10, top 12 teams, they're all recognizable. Okay. And they like that comfort level of the name of the team, despite how bad they might be. How's Michigan? Well, Michigan's out of the top 25 now. It's national champion from last year. But they kept sliding and people didn't take them serious because they didn't have Harbaugh. They didn't have some of the offensive linemen. Their quarterback is gone and they just continued to tumble. And again, I think the system is flawed in how we assess teams. And you make a valid point with regard to we look the other way when one team loses compared to another, and we come up with multiple excuses, and it's not right.
Right. I mean, Texas A&M is ranked 14th in the nation right now. Texas A&M is right there on the cusp of being a playoff team, and Mizzou took a huge drop when they lost to that. Like, yeah, they got blown out, but they lost at Texas A&M in that game.
Yeah.
And we're going to punish them more for something like that. I mean, that's ridiculous. They fell more than Alabama lost when Alabama lost in Tennessee. They want to keep Alabama as close to that top 12 as possible.
Well, yeah, because Alabama moves the needle, man. Alabama moves the needle.
Some years, though, it's just not there. Hey, it's just not for them this year.
Well,
it's just not their year.
You know what? They still have some interesting games on their schedule. I never count that program out. And granted, it's a new coach, but I never count the program out. They have too many winning players in that organization there. So we'll see.
We still have a few overall undefeated teams. Oregon now the new number 1. They are 7-0. Penn State 6-0. Miami also undefeated. Iowa State, BYU, Indiana, and Pittsburgh. And then you have Army and Navy also undefeated. I don't know the last time though both those schools were undefeated this late in the
It's been a while. Well, I think you can include that for Indiana too. You'd have to go back to the days of Anthony Thompson and those good teams that they had. And Indiana is one of those, I won't call them a sentimental team, but it's one of those ones where you just kind of raise your eyebrow like, yeah, right. Okay. And again, we go back to scheduling, who have they played? That used to be one of the barometers, but now, Joe, I don't even know if we can say who have they played because the teams we thought we knew, we really don't know because they've had so many changes in their personnel.
College Game Day is going to be on the campus there at Indiana this weekend for the first time ever. They're going to do the game. They're going to do the pregame show from Indiana this weekend. So Lee Corso going back to Indiana for that show. Yeah, for that one. But Indiana has benefited this year. They do not play Oregon. They do not play Penn State this year. They do have to go to Ohio State, that game on November 23rd. But Indiana very well could still be undefeated by then. Washington, Michigan State, and Michigan, their next 3 games up.
Be careful. That's all I can say.
I'm just saying those are 3 teams that are not having a great year right now. So it's very possible they could still be undefeated by then.
Indiana's having a very good year against some not so good teams.
Another one in that mix, I really thought Miami was going to fall this weekend at Louisville. I thought that seemed like a perfect place for them to lose their first game of the year. That was probably the most exciting overall football game of the season of the past weekend, with that being a shootout the way that it was.
I got to tell you, man, I'm impressed with the resilience of Miami because there was a lot of expectation on them, bringing the U back to his glory days. And they had that big booster that was spending money like it was like, he owned the team. And they have a great talent pool to choose from, but no one took them serious because the quarterback situation was so up in the air. But they have been able to maintain. They play some good, solid defense. I'm not trying to say they're all the way back, but I think that they deserve the credit that they're getting.
The Illinois, it's a good story right now. They beat Michigan. They are what now in the year 6-1. They're ranked 20th in the nation. They have to go to Oregon this weekend. Tougher game this weekend right now. Illinois having to go to Oregon, or Mizzou having to go down to an Alabama team. I don't know if we know what their mindset is right now down in Alabama.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point you make. I think the other thing that we got to get used to, and we heard James Franklin kind of grouse about it last week, that travel to the West Coast for a college football team, I think it's going to be a little bit more than what most people bargain for, because you're basically packing up a small city to go out there and play. I think you'll have some people that'll be ornery and be upset about what happened to Alabama and think they can pin it on Missouri. Hey, if I'm Missouri, I come out and I'm slinging. I'm going to make sure that Alabama doesn't touch the ball. And he's got that kind of offense where and it's not just Luther Burden. You've got some other guys you can throw underneath. And we've talked about this before. We thought maybe Missouri was sitting on part of their offense and not using it. If you don't use it this weekend, there'll be no reason to ever use it again.
I lost you there for a second there at the end, but really though, Claibs, if you have plays that you haven't used yet this year that you're not going to use for Alabama, then those plays just don't exist. You just rip out that page in the playbook. And
you wasted all of our time practicing.
Exactly. But no, it really doesn't feel like they have fired on all cylinders yet on offense. That final drive where they scored, where they went ahead on Saturday, penalties helped them out in a few cases. But I still feel like we have yet to see what this offense can really do. Maybe it just isn't there though. Maybe it's just all in our heads of what we expect to do when you look at the names that are out there with Burden and Weiss and Noel and everybody else that's out there and Norfleet, and you just think, all right, they got all these weapons. Maybe they really don't.
We're gonna find out this weekend.
But we keep saying that though. So
let's keep it moving.
We will take. Hey, let's take our final break though, Claibs. When we come back, we will hit on some NFL stuff from this
and WNBA.
We'll let you break down the WNBA. We'll do that as well right here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura.
Are you ready for a challenging and rewarding career? There are quality jobs in the construction industry.
I got out of college and my career choices were very limited, and this provided me with a plan for the present and the future at the same time.
I actually have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was making less than I make as a first-year apprentice painter.
I didn't go to college. I have no college debt. I make more money than the majority of people I know that went to college.
Take your first step towards a rewarding career. Visit stlouispdf.org.
Final segment here of Lunch with Claibs and Joe. Claibs, week 7 of the NFL, almost in the books. 2 Monday night games tonight, but we have one undefeated team left in the NFL as the Chiefs beat the 49ers yesterday, and the Vikings fall to the Lions.
I'm a little surprised that the Chiefs are undefeated, but they're winning on defense. Spagnuolo's done a remarkable job. He's got some healthy people over there. Man, I guess there's something to be said for familiarity, because those guys know what they're capable of doing. And even with that said, there's so many new faces that are having an impact. But the thing is, I tell you something, man. I know they can have a lot of injuries, but man, the 49ers, man, just don't look like they have it at all. Their special teams were awful. Defensively, Bosa, I barely heard his name yesterday. Their linebacker, middle linebacker, he was solid, but this is not the same 49er team. And I'm wondering, is that just because it's Kansas City, or is this something that is one of the reasons why they struggle at the beginning? Again, a lot of injuries on offense. They haven't had McCaffrey all year, and that was a red flag for a lot of teams that said, be careful on signing this guy to a long-term deal because he stays hurt, and now they're seeing it firsthand.
Yeah, that's one that let's put that in the same category as like Tommy Edman, where I think the 49ers thought that he was going to be ready to go a lot sooner than he was. I mean, because beginning of the year, it just kind of seemed like, oh, he's missing week 1. All right, he'll be back. Yep. Now here we are in week 7, and
no relief in sight.
You stopped hearing reports about when CMC is going to be back, and it looks like at this point it's just going to be a lost year, especially now with them being 3-4.
Well, they can still turn around. They get some people back healthy, but they lose Ayuk yesterday, and that's devastating. Deebo Samuel got sick right before the game, so they're all over the place, and they don't have enough depth to weather that sort of storm. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But let me say this: the guy who gets maligned the most in football is Deshaun Watson. That was a brutal injury yesterday, and to hear people cheering that he was coming out of the game, just I don't know what's wrong with fans today, man. Between that in Cleveland and what we saw at Texas and some of the other things that I'm hearing about players talking about now that are going on around sports, these fans need to get a grip on themselves. But what they did to Watson yesterday was criminal. And I know he hasn't played well. And he'll be the first one to tell you the man is hurt, okay? He injured himself. It might be career threatening. And for how they conducted themselves yesterday, just didn't show a lot of class. And it was interesting to hear or read some of the tweets from some of Cleveland's finest saying how disappointed they were in the actions of those fans. Now, fans, it's almost like when they booed Jerry Krause, a dead man in Chicago that night.
Booed his wife.
She didn't make one trade. And we got to get a grip on it, man. But I think that's a societal thing because you look at how our politics are developing. You know, it was never this way, and now it's found its way to the playing field and the playing surfaces, and it's wrong, just totally wrong.
No, it's just people living and dying on every single week of the game. I found myself on Saturday locked into that Mizzou game and getting anxious over the end of that Mizzou game. And I sat there and I even texted a friend. I'm like, I have zero ties to Mizzou. I didn't go to Mizzou. I don't have any relatives at Mizzou. I'm not a Mizzou fan. You know, they're the local football team. I like watching them. Like, why the hell am I getting so worked up in this? And I kind of was like, okay, hey, they won. Great. That would not have affected my day one way or another if they would have won or lost for that. There was not a single game that was played this weekend in any sport where I sat there and I watched it that affected my mood one way or another at the very end of things. And I'll tell you what, it's real nice to be able to sit there and say that and watch some of these games and realize that, you know what, hey, I don't care who wins or loses. I just want to see a good game. And a lot of people need to just take that into account too.
Yeah, I agree. I was on the sidelines for the game, and first, the energy in the stadium was something that you normally don't see. But I had no dog in the fight. Yeah, did I want Missouri to win? Yeah, sure. But I wasn't going to kick my dog when I got home if they didn't. There's a lot more at stake for those people, those players and coaches and everybody else associated with it. But I wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
But bottom line is, I think gambling has a lot to do with it. And it's one of the negatives to getting sports involved in gambling. But overall, man, just fan etiquette is it's terrible.
Hopefully, what if anything comes out of this weekend, I think Mizzou fans appreciate Brady Cook even more for seeing what he did in that second half, coming back and leading them to victory, because he has received a lot of hate over the years, and I would like to think that he probably changed the narrative on him. And
you won't change the narrative. So there'll be always some haters.
Claibs, we have
be some haters.
2 more games this weekend this week for the NFL Monday Night Football. Not a damn person's going to watch Chargers Cardinals tonight. No, there are relatives of those players that are going to be tuned into Ravens Buccaneers on the Monday Night doubleheader tonight.
I just got an invitation from a good friend. I'm going to go over his house and watch. And I don't normally do that, but he's a really smart guy. So I'm going to go watch a game with him, and I'm looking forward to that. I think Baltimore's the best team in the game right now, and they're going to even be better when the weather gets bad, because they can hurt you with Henry and or Lamar. The receiving corps starting to figure it out. They throw to the tight end a little bit more, and the defense is just good enough. They tackle well, and their special teams are always going to be good.
You say Ravens. I think Lions right now are the best team in football. For what they did a week after losing Aiden Hutchinson yesterday to the Vikings, that's a really dangerous team right now.
Okay, so Detroit and Baltimore in the Super Bowl.
No.
Why not?
I don't know, because the Chiefs seem to find a way, don't they?
Okay. I mean, I'm just rolling it out there. I just think Baltimore. I think Baltimore is a handful for somebody right now. They got to stay. The key to any of these teams is you have to stay healthy.
Right.
You can't lose that many guys.
And right now, that's what's going to hurt. That's what's hurting the Lions right now is the issue with Aiden Hutchinson. The one guy, because I don't know when the trade deadline is in the NFL, but I know it's coming up here
next
soon.
week, isn't it?
Is it next week?
Yeah.
So one guy to look at is Hassan Reddick of the Jets, who I know ended his holdout here recently, and would have been a good fit to replace Aiden Hutchinson, help with the pass rush there in Detroit. But I don't know if you saw this. So the Jets, if they trade Hassan Reddick to another NFC team, they have to give another draft pick to the Eagles for that trade. That's how the Eagles worked it in. So they knew Hassan Reddick was a headache, and they didn't want him coming back around and biting them in the ass again with another team in the NFC.
So
they added clauses into that.
You need a 3-team deal to give them another pick.
Right. Which you don't hear that much in NFL.
Well, but here's the other thing. You got to look at the cap numbers and make sure they line up. Can you afford them? Or you're going to redo his deal?
Right.
Or are you going to let the Jets redo it?
They said, I mean, he already agreed to a deal. He ended his holdout, and he agreed to a short-term, I guess, right now he'll receive the remainder of his 2024 salary, about $9 million plus new incentives that will allow him to recoup the $12 million that he lost in fines.
Nobody pays fines.
And by rule, a team can't waive those offseason fines. Yeah. So they are allowing him to earn those incentives back at some point this year. But the Jets, I mean, the way they got beat last night by the Steelers, I think we could finally close the book on them for this season.
I never opened it. I never thought. I don't. As much as we want to make Aaron Rodgers a legend, and at one point he was a good player, I think for a guy who never owns anything, I don't want. And then the way Adams got himself traded there, I don't trust either one of them. So I was. Listen, they don't do well. There's one thing in New York they don't do well. That's have good football teams anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them.
No,
not very good.
No.
All right, before we get out of here,
yeah.
Kudos.
WNBA.
Liberty last night won their first championship against a very game Minnesota Lynx team. Nafisa Collier was outstanding. But when you are the best player on the floor and you don't get to the free throw line, that's internal. They did get hosed on that call at the end. And they should have won that game last night. But the energy in that building and just how ESPN presented it, I tip my cap to the league. They took full advantage of the influx of new talent, and they also found some talent that was emerging in Collier and some other players. This league is going in the right direction, and I'm happy for them. I'll be interested to see what their valuation of these teams is going to be after this year. I think the highest valuation, it may be somewhere around $150 million, which is a good investment for somebody who wants to jump in and be involved in the ownership of a team at this point. But they did the right thing. They got to get their officiating straight now. Their officiating was awful. And I didn't think the officiating in the NFL was very good yesterday either. And the problem is we only think of the referee. You know, he's the one that gives you the call, but in most cases, he's not the one throwing the flag. He's got other guys out there to report to him. But when your crew is off, man, it's hard to watch. And I don't think the officiating is as good as it needs to be because there's a lot at stake these days. And I don't know how you fix it. I really don't. But the WNBA better fix theirs real quick. If not, they're going to lose everybody.
Claibs, last weekend you were in Columbia for Mizzou and Auburn. Where are you headed this week?
It's a great question. My good friends in Tuscaloosa may see me. I'm kind of on the tour circuit now, man. I'm just hanging out. So if not, there's a couple of events I can do here, but I'm thinking about rolling down there for that.
You driving down there for that?
Hell no.
Where do you fly into for
Birmingham.
Tuscaloosa?
You go flying to Birmingham. It's less than an hour's drive from Birmingham.
Okay. I looked at the drive to see what it was to get down there, just how you get down to Tuscaloosa, and that's a bit of a drive down there.
Yeah, you might as well drive to Florida.
Yeah. All right, Claibs, that's going to wrap it up this week. Daily Card.